The massive ship appeared without warning above Earth's moon on a Tuesday morning that would change humanity forever. It hung there like a silver cathedral in space, 30 kilometers long and radiating power that made every sensor on Earth scream warnings into the void within hours. The alien vessel broadcast a message in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and 70 other human languages. People of Earth, the voice said with a tone that carried millennia of authority, "We are the Galactic Concordat, and we have come to bring you into our protection." The world stopped. Every television screen, every phone, every display showed the same transmission. Victoria Chen stood in the emergency session of Earth's United Council, watching the alien delegates materialize in holographic form before the assembled representatives of humanity. The creatures called themselves High Arbiters. There were 5 of them, each from a different species. The lead arbiter was a being called Throne Master Velix, a towering figure with crystalline skin that refracted light into rainbow patterns. For 10,000 years, we have maintained peace across 47 species and 12,000 worlds, Velix announced, his voice resonating like struck metal. "We have observed your species for 3 centuries. Victoria felt her hands clench. 3 centuries of watching and never making contact until now. "Your species has shown concerning patterns," another arbiter added. This one resembling a floating mass of tentacles with bioluminescent nodes. Warfare, nuclear weapons, environmental destruction, artificial intelligence experimentation. The litany of humanity's sins continued. Victoria glanced at the other human representatives. Director James Okafor of the African Union sat rigid, his jaw tight. Chancellor Schmidt of the European Coalition had gone pale. Ambassador Park from the Pacific Alliance was furiously taking notes. "Therefore," Velix continued, "the Concordat has determined that humanity requires protective custodianship until such time as you prove capable of responsible self-governance." The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Custodianship. "You will dismantle all military vessels and weapon systems," Velix said, his tone suggesting this was merely procedural. "You will submit to Concordat oversight of all technological development. You will accept Concordat governors on each of your major population centers, and you will integrate into the Concordat economic and social structure." Victoria stood slowly. "And if we refuse?" The 5 arbiters regarded her with something between amusement and pity. "No species has refused in 10,000 years," Velix said simply. "Our fleet numbers 7,000 capital ships. Our weapons can sterilize planets from orbit. We control every faster-than-light route in known space." He leaned forward, and despite being only a hologram, his presence filled the chamber. "Refusal is not wisdom, Ambassador Chun. It is suicide." The other arbiters murmured agreement. "You have 30 days to signal your acceptance," Velix declared. "Disarmament protocols will begin immediately upon your compliance. Concordat transition teams will arrive within 60 days. We anticipate full integration within 5 years." 5 years, Victoria repeated softly. "A generous timeline," one of the other arbiters said. "A reptilian being with too many eyes. The Vrin took only 2 years to integrate, but they were more cooperative from the start." Director Okafor stood now, his voice carrying the weight of 1 billion voices. "You speak of peace, but you arrive with threats. You speak of protection, but you demand surrender. You speak of cooperation, but you offer only domination." Velix's crystalline face showed no emotion. "We speak of reality. Director Okafor, we are offering you survival. The alternative is being quarantined from galactic civilization, or, if you prove too dangerous, elimination." The word hung there. Elimination. Chancellor Schmidt found her voice. "What happens to species that refuse?" For the first time, the arbiters exchanged glances. "There are no species that refuse twice," Velix said finally. The meaning was clear enough. The holographic conference ended, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted, argued, demanded action. Victoria stood at the window, looking up at the moon where the alien vessel waited 30 days behind her. The arguments raged. Some delegates called for immediate acceptance, citing the impossibility of resistance. Others demanded defiance regardless of cost. We must be realistic, the delegate from the Middle Eastern Confederation said. They have thousands of ships and weapons we cannot imagine. They have underestimated humanity before, Okafor countered. Every tyrant in history thought they were unstoppable until they met people willing to die for freedom. This is not a tyrant from history, Schmidt shot back. This is an empire spanning thousands of worlds with technology 10,000 years more advanced than ours. Victoria turned from the window. They gave us 30 days, she said quietly, and the room gradually fell silent. Why 30 days? The question hung there. Standard diplomatic protocol, someone suggested. No. Victoria shook her head. If they wanted to sterilize us, they would have done it already. If they wanted to force compliance, they have the power, so why give us time to think? To prepare? To choose? Okafor's eyes narrowed. You think it's a test. I think they need something from us, Victoria said. Species that cooperate willingly are easier to govern than conquered populations. They want us to choose submission. Then we deny them that satisfaction, Park said firmly, and condemn billions to death? Schmidt demanded the argument. Renewed. Victoria looked back at the moon, at the silver vessel that held humanity's ultimatum across Earth. People watched the news broadcasts with growing fear in Moscow. Crowds gathered in Red Square demanding resistance in New York. Protesters called for acceptance and survival in Beijing. The government had already begun quiet mobilization of hidden military assets in Lagos. Scientists were being pulled from universities into secret facilities in Sao Paulo, orbital construction platforms that supposedly built commercial satellites began retooling for war production. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for many possibilities. First, contact had always been one of them. The preparations had been kept quiet, distributed, hidden in plain sight, not because humanity was paranoid, because humanity remembered its history. Every civilization that had met a more powerful force, unprepared, had been consumed by it. Victoria returned to her office as the emergency session dissolved into committees and sub-councils. In her desk was a tablet with eyes only. Intelligence from every major power on Earth, hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, weapons research that pushed the boundaries of physics. AI systems that had been developed in secret despite international treaties banning them. Quantum communication networks that could coordinate a global response in microseconds. Humanity had not been idle during its years reaching for the stars, and now, looking at the assessment of Earth's actual military capabilities versus the Concordat's known strength, Victoria felt the weight of what was coming. The odds were not good. They were catastrophic, but there was something that Concordat had not calculated in their 10,000 years of dominance. They had never encountered a species that had clawed its way up from tribal warfare through world wars, through nuclear brinksmanship, and survived every apocalypse it had created for itself. They had never met a species that had learned to cooperate after generations of competition. They had never faced humanity. Victoria began composing her response. 30 days to choose between slavery and war. She knew which one humanity would choose. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant by give me liberty or give me death. The 30th day arrived with the entire galaxy watching. Earth's response was scheduled to broadcast simultaneously to the Concordat vessel, to every member species of the Concordat, And to any civilization with the technology to receive it, Victoria Chun stood before the cameras in a simple blue suit. The flag of United Earth behind her, she had not slept in 3 days, neither had most of humanity's leadership. The preparations had been intense, desperate, and utterly necessary. Throne Master Velix, High Arbiters of the Galactic Concordat, people of the galaxy, Victoria began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to do. 30 days ago, you came to Earth with an ultimatum. She paused, letting the words settle. You observed us for 3 centuries and judged us unworthy of self-governance. You cited our wars, our weapons, our mistakes as evidence of our need for your custodianship. Victoria leaned forward slightly. You were right that we have made mistakes. We have fought wars among ourselves. We have built terrible weapons. We have damaged our world. We have created problems that threatened our very existence. Across the Concordat, species watched with satisfaction. Another primitive world was accepting reality. But you made one critical error in your judgment, Victoria continued, and her voice hardened like steel. You mistake our history for weakness. The galaxy leaned closer. Every war we fought taught us the cost of conflict. Every weapon we built showed us the responsibility of power. Every mistake we made became a lesson we carried forward. We did not need your guidance to learn these truths. We paid for them in blood and tears and generations of struggle. Victoria stood straighter. We unified our world not through conquest, but through choice. We set aside our differences, not because we were forced to, but because we decided our similarities mattered more. We built a civilization that values every voice, protects every life, and extends dignity to all. Her voice rose. And now you come to us and demand we surrender everything we built, everything we learned, everything we fought for. And you call it protection. The silence across the galaxy was absolute. The answer is no. 3 words that shook a 10,000-year-old empire. We reject your custodianship. We reject your governors. We reject your oversight. We reject your entire premise that might makes right and age grants wisdom. Victoria's eyes blazed. You will not disarm us. You will not control us. You will not rule us. Humanity chooses freedom, even if that choice costs us everything. She took a breath. You called us reckless and aggressive. But we call ourselves determined and brave. You see our weapons as proof of our violence. But we see them as tools we built to protect what we love. You view our independence as dangerous, but we know it as the foundation of our dignity. The transmission was being watched on every Concordat world now. To the people of the Concordat, we ask you to question what your leaders have told you about us. We ask you to wonder why they fear a species that only wants to be free. We ask you to consider what else they might have kept from you in their 10,000 years of absolute power. Velix was already signaling his fleet commanders. This primitive species needed to learn its lesson quickly. We know you have more ships than us. We know your technology is more advanced. We know the odds favor you in every calculation. Victoria smiled. But you have never fought humanity before. The declaration of war was implicit. We do not seek conflict, but we will not avoid it. We do not want bloodshed, but we will not surrender to avoid it. We would prefer to join the galactic community as equals, but we will never join it as slaves. She placed her hand over her heart. So come. Throne Master Velix, come with your 7,000 ships and your planet-killer weapons. Come and try to break the spirit of a species that has survived ice ages and plagues and wars that consume continents. Come and test yourself against people who walked on their moon before they had computers, who split the atom before they could cure common diseases, who reached for the stars because we refused to accept that anything was impossible. Victoria's voice dropped too. Something quiet and infinitely dangerous. Come and learn why every tyrant in our history who thought humans would bow eventually broke themselves against our refusal. The transmission ended for 3 seconds. The galaxy was silent, then chaos erupted on Earth. Sirens began wailing as the hidden military installations came fully online. The asteroid belt lit up, with fusion drives as warships that officially did not exist began their burn toward defensive positions. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as commercial satellites reconfigured themselves into weapon batteries. The moon's far side opened like a flower as hangar doors hidden for decades revealed strike craft carriers. Mars colonies deployed defense grids that had been built under the cover of mining operations. Victoria walked from the broadcast chamber to the war room where Director Okafor, Chancellor Schmidt, and a dozen military commanders waited. "They will come hard and fast," Okafor said without preamble. "The Licks will want to make an example. Let him try," Schmidt said. And despite her earlier calls for caution, her eyes held nothing but determination now. "We gave them a chance for peace." The first Concordat ships appeared on sensors 6 hours later. 40 vessels. A punitive force meant to destroy Mars colonies and force Earth's immediate surrender. They came in with weapons charged and shields at maximum. What they did not expect was the minefield human engineers had spent 20 years seeding the approaches to Mars with millions of autonomous explosive drones, each no bigger than a baseball, each capable of identifying targets and accelerating to a fraction of light speed. The Concordat force lost 12 ships in the first 30 seconds. They had never encountered autonomous swarm warfare before. The Concordat prohibited AI weapon systems as too dangerous. Humanity had no such restrictions. What followed was not a battle, but a brutal lesson in human tactical thinking. Remaining Concordat ships found themselves fighting enemies they could barely track. Human strike craft were small, fast, and piloted by enhanced humans whose reaction times had been boosted by neural implants. Another Concordat prohibition. Humanity had ignored. The battle lasted 4 hours when it ended. 38 of the 40 Concordat ships were debris. The 2 survivors limped back to the main fleet with reports that their commanders found almost impossible to believe. Licks watched the battle recordings with growing anger. They cheated. One of his advisors said they adapted. The Licks corrected coldly, and we underestimated them. On Earth, the victory was celebrated for exactly 10 minutes before the reality sank in. That had been a scouting force. The real fleet was coming. 7,000 ships were burning toward human space. Victoria received the casualty reports from the Mars battle. 33 pilots killed, 16 ships destroyed, 2 colonies damaged by Concordat weapons that got through the defense against 38 enemy kills. It was a stunning victory, but the math was brutal. If they traded at even 100-to-1 ratio, humanity would still lose. "Then we do not trade evenly," Okafor said when she voiced this concern. "We make them bleed for every meter. We hit them where they are not looking. We fight dirty, we fight smart, and we fight with everything we have." Schmidt pulled up a tactical display. "Our scientists have made progress on the captured Concordat technology from the wrecks. They are learning fast." Victoria nodded. "How long until the main fleet arrives?" 2 weeks at their current speed. 14 days to prepare for the largest military engagement in human history across Earth. Factories worked around the clock. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Scientists pushed themselves to exhaustion, reverse engineering alien technology, and in the depths of classified facilities, humanity's most secret weapons began their final preparations. Weapons the Concordat did not know existed. Weapons that would change everything. The galaxy watched and waited. Some species began quietly withdrawing their support from the Concordat. Others doubled their commitment to putting humanity in its place. But all of them wondered the same thing. what would happen when an unstoppable force met an immovable spirit in 2 weeks. They would find out the ultimate galactic war had begun. The Concordat fleet arrived at the edge of human space like a metal storm, 7,000 capital ships, each larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their formation was perfect, their shields overlapping in a defensive wall that could withstand planetary bombardment. Thrawn Master Velix stood on his flagship's command deck, watching the primitive human worlds ahead. This would be over quickly. Humanity had won one battle through surprise and technological tricks, but now the Concordat came prepared, advanced to firing range. Velix commanded, target their orbital facilities first. Leave the planets intact for occupation. The fleet moved forward. That was when the asteroids hit, not thrown, not fired from ships, but accelerated to relativistic speeds over weeks of careful calculation. Chunks of rock and iron moving at 30% of light speed. By the time the Concordat sensors detected them, there was no time to evade. The impacts were catastrophic. Kinetic energy equivalent to nuclear weapons tore through shields that were designed to stop energy weapons. 17 capital ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the raw physics of mass times velocity squared. Velix's fleet scattered, breaking formation in panic. Reform, he shouted. Maintain defensive posture. But humanity was not done. From hidden positions in the asteroid belt, human ships emerged, not capital ships trying to match the Concordat's firepower. Small, fast attack craft, each carried a single weapon, an experimental FTL drive rigged to overload. The tactic was insane. It was also devastatingly effective. Human pilots screened toward Concordat vessels, calculated FTL jumps with suicidal precision, and emerged inside the enemy ships. The drives detonated. Microseconds later, 30 Concordat vessels died in the first wave. The pilots who flew those missions knew they would not return. They went anyway. What are they doing? Velix's tactical officer screamed. They are killing themselves. They are winning, Velix said quietly, horror dawning in his crystalline eyes. The Concordat had rules about warfare, honor codes developed over thousands of years. Humanity had no such limitations. They fought to win, by any means necessary. The next wave came not from ships, but from something the Concordat sensors could barely detect: nanoscale weapons. Clouds of microscopic machines that attached to ship hulls and began disassembling them atom by atom. The Concordat had banned nanotechnology as too dangerous. Humanity had weaponized it. Fall back. Velix ordered reform at Rally Point Gamma. The fleet retreated, leaving behind debris and dying ships. But even in retreat, they were hunted human submarine ships designed to operate in the gravity wells of planets where Concordat vessels were less maneuverable, rose from gas giants and attacked fuel convoys. Automated drones, controlled by quantum-linked AI that made decisions faster than any biological mind, swarmed isolated vessels. The Concordat was bleeding in 3 weeks of running battles. They had lost 400 ships. Humanity had lost twice that many, but the difference was critical. The Concordat had expected 0 losses. Humanity had expected to lose everything, and kept fighting anyway. Commander James Okafor stood on the bridge of the destroyer Defiance, studying the tactical display. His orders were clear and utterly insane. All hands. This is the commander, he said over ship-wide communications. What we are about to do will seem crazy. It is crazy, but it is also necessary. His crew had volunteered for this mission, knowing the odds, knowing there was no return to Defiance. And 3 other destroyers burned hard toward the Concordat's main formation at Proxima Station. Enemy had gathered there to regroup, consolidate, and plan their next assault. 200 capital ships in close formation, protected by overlapping shields and point defense systems, impossible to attack conventionally. Engineering, Okafor called. Status on the antimatter containment. Rigged to blow on your mark, sir, came the response. We have maybe 5 minutes before it goes critical with or without us. Helm. Plot a course straight into the center of their formation. Course laid in, sir. All hands, Okafor said. And his voice was steady despite what he was ordering. Abandon ship. You have 2 minutes to reach the escape pods. Sir? His helmsman said, That is an order. I need volunteers to stay and see this through. Everyone else goes now. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Not one person moved toward the escape pods. With respect. Sir, his tactical officer said, we are all volunteers. And we are all staying. Okafor felt something break inside him and something else harden. Then, it's been an honor serving with you. The Defiant's accelerated Concordat sensors detected the approach, flagged it as a suicide run, and 36 ships moved to intercept. They destroyed one of the other. Destroyers crippled another, but the Defiance and one sister ship made it through Kafa 4. Watch the enemy formation grow larger in the view screen. Containment failure in 10 seconds. Engineering reported. For Earth. Okafor said quietly. The Defiance plunged into the center of the Concordat formation and detonated its antimatter core. The explosion consumed everything within 1,000 kilometers. 23 capital ships died instantly. 40 more, worse, crippled beyond repair and across the galaxy. Species watched the recording and realized something terrifying. Humanity would do anything to win. The Concordat's Council of Arbiters met in emergency session. They are savages. One arbiter shouted. They fight without honor, without restraint. They fight to survive, another replied grimly. We have lost 600 ships, a third arbiter said. In 10,000 years of Concordat peace, we have never lost 600 ships. And they show no signs of surrender. Valix stood before the council. His flagship had been damaged in the Proxima Station attack. They are not fighting to win territory or resources, he reported. They are fighting to make us stop. Every engagement costs us more than we can afford, while they seem willing to pay any price. Then we escalate, the chief arbiter declared. We deploy the planet-killer weapons. We make Earth an example that the galaxy will never forget. But even as the order was given, complications arose. 3 Concordat member species had withdrawn their fleets. They cited the massive casualties and questioned whether forcing humanity's submission was worth the cost. 6 other species were experiencing internal problems. Humanity had been broadcasting constantly to Concordat space, not propaganda, but information technical specifications for technologies. The Concordat had restricted medical treatments the ruling council had classified as dangerous. Historical records showing how the Concordat had suppressed innovation for millennia. The younger species were realizing they had been held back deliberately, systematically. The Concordat was fracturing, and humanity pressed their advantage. Human special forces teams traveling in captured Concordat vessels infiltrated member worlds. They did not attack civilians or infrastructure. They delivered data packages to underground network scientists, engineers, and philosophers on 12 worlds. Suddenly had access to information their governments had hidden for generations. Rebellion sparked small at first, but growing. Meanwhile, humanity's scientists were performing miracles. Dr. Amara Okonkwo had led a team that cracked the Concordat's FDL network, supposedly unbreakable encryption that protected their faster-than-light communications and travel routes. With that breakthrough, humanity could suddenly strike anywhere in Concordat space. The strategic balance shifted dramatically. We can hit their shipyards, Victoria said in the War Council meeting. We can destroy their ability to replace losses. We can also target their homeworlds. Okafor's replacement suggested. Victoria shook her head. We are not here to conquer. We are here to survive and be free. We hit military targets only. They are preparing to glass Earth," Schmidt pointed out, "which is why we launch Operation Prometheus." Victoria said the plan was audacious simultaneous strikes on the homeworlds of all 5 arbiter species, not to destroy cities or kill populations, but to disable military infrastructure and broadcast the truth directly to every citizen. Humanity would need every ship, every weapon, every pilot, and they would need help. That help came from an unexpected source, the Kryn, a species that had been part of the Concordat for 4,000 years. Made contact with Earth, their message was simple. They were tired of being ruled and restricted. They would provide intelligence on Concordat defensive positions in return. They asked only for the freedom to develop their own technology. Victoria accepted immediately. 3 other species followed. The coalition was forming, not to destroy the Concordat, but to transform it. The stage was set for the largest military operation in galactic history, and at the center of it all was a single species that refused to bow, a species that had turned a war of annihilation into a war of liberation. The Concordat had come to humble humanity instead. Humanity was about to reshape the galaxy. The rebellion spread like fire across dry grassland within 2 months of humanity's defiance. 9 species had openly withdrawn support from the Concordat. 17 more were experiencing civil unrest. Information humanity had released was devastating records, showing how the Concordat had suppressed medical technology that could have saved billions of lives, evidence of restricted scientific knowledge that member species were prohibited from developing, historical documents proving the Concordat had deliberately kept younger civilizations dependent and weak. The truth shattered the foundation of 10,000 years of rule on the Kryn homeworld. Protests filled the capital city. Citizens demanded access to artificial intelligence, technology that the Concordat had banned as too dangerous. They had watched humans use AI to devastating effect in the war. Why were they denied the same tools? The Concordat's answer that they were protecting the Kryn from themselves. No longer satisfied, similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. The Vryn, who had been held up as model Concordat members, discovered their ancestors had been on the verge of developing faster than light travel. Before the Concordat arrived, the technology had been confiscated and classified for their own protection. 3,000 years of potential advancement stolen. The Zephyrini learned that genetic therapies capable of extending their lifespans had been available for centuries. The Concordat Council had deemed such technology socially destabilizing. Millions had died who could have lived. The anger was building, and humanity kept feeding it, not with lies or propaganda, simply with truth. Victoria watched the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. Public opinion in Concordat space is shifting rapidly. She told the War Council, "We are no longer seen as reckless primitives, but as liberators that will not stop their fleets." Okafor's successor, Admiral Quaim Mensa, pointed out, "Velix still commands 3,000 ships, but how many of those crews still believe in what they are fighting for?" Schmidt asked. It was the critical question. The Concordat military was experiencing defections, small numbers at first, individual ships refusing orders, then entire squadrons going silent, disappearing into deep space. Some were fleeing the war, others were joining humanity's coalition. The Concordat was hemorrhaging strength and cohesion. Throne Master Velix felt the empire crumbling beneath his feet. His advisors brought him reports of rebellions, defections, and civil disorder. Council of Arbiters was paralyzed by infighting. Some wanted total war against humanity. Others advocated immediate negotiations. To total war against humanity. Others advocated immediate negotiations still. Others were desperately trying to hold the Concordat together by making concessions. Release some of the restricted technologies, one arbiter suggested. Show the member species we trust them. If we release those technologies now, it proves humanity's accusations correct, another countered. We held them back deliberately. They already believe that. The first arbiter snapped back. Velix silenced them with a gesture. Prepare the planet killer weapon, he ordered. If we cannot restore order through reason, we will restore it through fear. The decision was made. Earth would burn as an example. The message would be clear. Defiance leads to extinction, but the execution of that plan proved more difficult than anticipated. The weapon platform carrying the planet killer device was massive, powerful, and well defended. It would take weeks to move it into position to target Earth, weeks that humanity used to prepare Operation Prometheus. Dr. Amara Okonkwo worked 72 hours straight, finalizing the network intrusion package that would allow human ships to travel the Concordat FTL routes freely. This will work, she told Victoria during a brief rest period. We can reach any Concordat world in days instead of months. And the broadcast system? Ready, Amara confirmed. Once we disable their military communications, we can transmit directly to civilian networks on all 5 Arbiter homeworlds simultaneously. Victoria reviewed the operational plan one more time. Strike teams would hit each Arbiter homeworld. Their targets were military command centers, fleet coordination hubs, and propaganda broadcasting systems. They would avoid civilian casualties at all costs. This was not a mission of revenge, but of liberation. The fleet assembled in secret, human warships alongside Kryn vessels, Zephyrine cruisers, and ships from half a dozen other species. It was the first truly multi-species coalition in galactic history, formed not by conquest or coercion, but by choice. We jump in 30 minutes, Admiral Mensa announced. All ships report ready status. Victoria stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, looking at the diverse crew working together. Humans alongside aliens who weeks ago had been enemies. Now they were allies. The countdown reached 0. Space Tour open as hundreds of ships engaged their FTL drives simultaneously. The Concordats sensors screamed warnings across 5-star systems, but by the time defenders reacted, it was too late. The attack was everywhere at once on Velix's homeworld. Human strike fighters disabled the orbital defense grid in the first 3 minutes. Kryn special forces stormed the military command center, not to destroy it, but to capture it intact. They needed the broadcasting equipment on the second Arbiter's world. Zephyrine ships engaged in precision strikes against weapon platforms. Human engineers infiltrated ground facilities. The pattern repeated across all 5 worlds. Swift, surgical, overwhelming within 6 hours. Every Arbiter homeworld's military infrastructure was crippled. Not destroy humanity, needed them functional for what came next. Broadcasting in all languages, Amara announced from Earth. Civilian networks are receiving our transmission now. Victoria's message played across 5 worlds simultaneously. People of the Concordat, we are humanity, and we come not as conquerors, but as truth-tellers. She stood before the camera, exhausted but unbowed. Your leaders told you we were dangerous, aggressive, unworthy of self-governance. They told you they observed us and found us wanting. Victoria paused, but they did not tell you what they have been hiding from you. A screen filled with documents, technical specifications, medical research, everything the Concordat had suppressed. For 10,000 years, your rulers have held you back. They restricted your technology, limited your medicine, controlled your information, and they called it protection. The evidence scrolled past, undeniable and damning. They feared what you might become if given freedom to grow, to learn, to reach your full potential. So they kept you dependent, kept you weak, kept you grateful for their guidance. Victoria's voice hardened. We refuse to accept that future for ourselves. And we offer you the choice to refuse it as well. We did not start this war, but we will end it. Not with the subjugation of our enemies, but with the liberation of our potential allies. The broadcast ended. The reaction was immediate and explosive on Velix's homeworld. Millions took to the streets. They demanded answers. From their government, they demanded the technologies that had been withheld. They demanded freedom. The same scenes played out. Across all 5 arbiter worlds, the Concordat's moral authority evaporated in. Ours Velix received reports of the chaos with something approaching despair. The population is in open revolt, his security chief reported. They are demanding we negotiate with the humans. We still have the planet killer weapon, Velix said. Do we? His chief arbiter colleague, asked Quiet Lix, looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I mean, the crew of that weapon platform has been watching the same broadcasts as everyone else. I mean, they know what we have done, what we have hidden. They will follow orders. Will they? The other arbiter asked. Will they really glass an entire world full of billions of innocent lives, just to preserve our power? The answer came 3 hours later. The planet killer weapon platform crew mutinied. They disabled the weapon and surrendered to a coalition fleet that included humans, Kryn, and defecting Concordat vessels. The commander's message was brief. We will not commit genocide for a lie. Velix's last military advantage was gone meanwhile. Earth itself faced its own crisis. Concordat forces, desperate and enraged, launched one final attack, a kamikaze fleet of hardliners who refused to accept their empires. Collapse. 300 ships burned toward Earth with weapons charged. They would destroy humanity's homeworld, even if it cost them everything, but they never reached Earth. A fleet of mixed coalition ships intercepted them. Kryn vessels fought alongside human destroyers. Chef-rain cruisers coordinated with defecting Concordat ships. The battle was brutal, but when it ended, Earth remained intact, protected, not by humanity alone, but by the allies they had. Inspired Victoria received the casualty reports with heavy heart. 200 ships lost defending Earth. More than half were not human vessel species that had been strangers weeks ago had died protecting humanity's world. The Concordat was finished, not destroyed by conquest, but transformed by truth. And across the galaxy, a new question emerged. What would replace it? The answer would shape the future of every civilization in known space. The trial of the Arbiter Council took place on neutral ground. A space station, constructed by volunteers from 20 species. Humans worked alongside Kryn, Zephrony beside Vryn, former enemies now united in purpose. The proceedings were broadcast across the entire galaxy. No more secrets, no more hidden decisions made in distant chambers. The charges were read by a multi-species tribunal. Systematic suppression of technological advancement, deliberate withholding of life-saving medical knowledge, restriction of fundamental rights of self-determination. The list went on for hours. Throne Master Velix stood before the tribunal, his crystalline form dimmed with something that might have been shame. We believed we were preventing chaos, he said when given the chance to speak. The younger species were so volatile, so quick to war, so eager to develop dangerous technologies, like humanity. Victoria asked from her seat in the chamber. She was there as both witness and representative of Earth. Velix met her gaze. Yes. Like humanity, we watched you nearly destroy yourselves a dozen times. Nuclear weapons, climate collapse, artificial intelligence run amok. We saw all of it and concluded you needed guidance. You concluded we needed control. Victoria corrected. Perhaps there is no difference. There is every difference, Victoria said softly. Guidance is offered and can be refused. Control is imposed and enforced. You chose the latter and called it the former. The tribunal deliberated for 3 days. The verdict was unanimous. The Arbiter Council was dissolved. Individual arbiters faced various punishments, ranging from exile to house arrest. None faced execution. That was humanity's one absolute demand. We did not fight this war to become executioners, Victoria had told the tribunal. We fought for the right to choose our own path. These beings deserve the same right. Let them live with the consequences of their choices. The sentence was considered merciful by some, too lenient by others, but it set the tone for what came next: the formation of the Galactic Federation. Founding conference took place on Earth. Species that had fought against humanity now sat beside species that had allied with them. The debates were fierce. Some wanted strong central authority to prevent chaos. Others demanded complete autonomy for every civilization. Victoria stood to address the assembled representatives. We have a unique opportunity, she said. For the first time in known history, we can build something not based on dominance, but on cooperation. Pretty words, a Concordat loyalist species representative said bitterly. But the cooperation requires trust, and trust is earned over generations, not granted in a moment. You are right, Victoria acknowledged. Trust must be earned. So let us start earning it now. She gestured to a holographic display. Earth proposes a federation based on 3 principles: self-determination, shared knowledge, and mutual defense. The display showed the framework each species would retain: complete sovereignty over their own worlds and systems. No central authority could override local governance. Technology and scientific knowledge would be freely shared among all member species. No restrictions, no classifications, no secret councils deciding what others could know, and member species would commit to mutual defense against external threats. An attack on one would be considered an attack on all. This is chaos waiting to happen, another representative argued. Without controls, species will develop dangerous weapons, destabilizing technologies, things that could threaten the entire galaxy. Admiral Mensa stood. We probably will, he admitted. Some species will make mistakes, some will develop things that frighten others. But the alternative is what we just destroyed. A system where those in power decide what everyone else is allowed to know, allowed to do, allowed to become. Better dangerous freedom than safe slavery. A Kryn delegate added. The debates continued for weeks. Compromises were made. A minimal federal structure was created, not to rule, but to coordinate a council with rotating membership. No permanent seats. No entrenched power. Decisions required supermajorities, ensuring no single species could dominate. Disputes would be settled by arbitration, not force. The Federation would maintain a joint military force, but commanded by officers from multiple species. Trust through shared responsibility. 3 months after the last shot was fired, the Galactic Federation Charter was signed. 47 species joined immediately. 12 more applied for membership. Within the year, the transformation of galactic civilization had begun. Dr. Amara Okonkwo led the new Federation Science Council. Her first act was to declassify 10,000 years of suppressed research, medical treatments that could save billions, energy technologies that could power civilizations, cleanly agricultural methods that could end hunger, genetic therapies that could extend lifespans. All of it released freely to any species that wanted it. This is your legacy, Victoria told her. You gave the galaxy its future back. Amara smiled tiredly. We gave them the choice. What they do with it is up to them, and the galaxy chose growth. The Kryn developed AI systems that revolutionized space travel. The Zephrony combined their natural biotechnology gifts with newly available genetic engineering. Entirely new species joined the Federation. Contacted by exploration vessels, now traveling routes, the Concordat had kept restricted Earth itself, experienced a renaissance the technologies gained from Concordat wrecks, freely shared by allied species, and developed by humanity's own desperate innovation during the war, combined into a golden age. Victoria Chun stood on the lunar surface, looking at Earth rising above the horizon. The planet still bore scars from the war cities rebuilt, orbital facilities under construction, but alive, free, and thriving. Quite a view. She turned to find Valix standing nearby, or rather his hologram. He was under house arrest on his homeworld, but permitted limited communications. "What do you want?" Victoria asked. "To apologize," Valix said simply. "I spent 10,000 years believing I knew what was best for the galaxy. It took your species weeks to prove me wrong." Victoria studied him. "Do you really believe that? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear?" Valix's crystalline form seemed to shimmer. "I believed we were preventing another great catastrophe. The galaxy had nearly destroyed itself before the Concordat brought order. I feared chaos more than tyranny. And now? Now I see that the catastrophe I feared was the very order I imposed. We created a galaxy of children, forever dependent on us, never allowed to grow." He paused. "Your species showed us that stumbling and failing and learning is not something to be prevented, but something essential. Without it, there is no real growth." Victoria nodded slowly. "Will you support the Federation?" "I will," Valix said, "for whatever my support is worth. I will advocate for the new order. Perhaps in time, I can help repair some of the damage I caused." "Perhaps," Victoria agreed. The conversation ended, and Victoria returned to her transport, but the exchange stayed with her. Redemption was possible, even for those who had been so terribly wrong back on Earth. She received news that made her pause. Deep space monitoring stations had detected something, an anomaly beyond the Federation's furthest territories' energy signatures that matched no known technology patterns that suggested intelligence, but nothing biological. The characteristics matched theoretical models of ancient artificial intelligence networks, things that should have been extinct for millions of years. Victoria called an emergency meeting of the Federation Council. "We may have a new threat," she told the assembled representatives. "Something beyond anything we have faced before. The species that had fought so hard for freedom now face the possibility of fighting for survival. Then we face it together," the Kryn representative said firmly. "As equals," added the Zephyrini. Delegate Victoria looked around the chamber at beings from dozens of worlds, united not by force but by choice. "The Concordat tried to protect the galaxy by controlling it," she said. "We will protect it by empowering it. Whatever is out there, whatever comes, we will meet it as free beings standing together." The vote was unanimous. The Federation would investigate, prepare, and if necessary, defend, but they would do it their way, with open sharing of information, with every species contributing what they could with no one species bearing the burden alone. As Victoria left the council chamber, she passed the memorial wall names of those who had died in the war, human and alien, side by side. They had paid the price for the freedom the galaxy now enjoyed. "We will honor your sacrifice," Victoria said quietly. "By never surrendering what you fought for, the galaxy was entering a new age, one of uncertainty, possibility, and freedom. Humanity had started as the weakest species in the fight. They had become the catalyst for galactic transformation, not through superior strength, but through unwavering determination, not through advanced technology, but through the simple refusal to bow. And now, as new challenges emerged from the darkness between stars, humanity would face them the same way they had faced the Concordat, standing tall, fighting smart, and never, ever giving up, because that was what humanity did. They stumbled, they failed, they learned, and they endured, and now they had taught the galaxy to do the same. Future was unknown, the dangers were real, but for the first time in 10,000 years, every species in the galaxy had the freedom to face those challenges on their own terms. The ultimate galactic war was over the real work of building a Betty.